Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new episode of South Central. My name is Jude Sanat and this is the show where we bring you key news and updates relevant to South India, from business and boardroom action to policy, politics and so much more. On that note, let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking at this hour. Knight Frank data reports a 4% and 12% spike in residential sales in Hyderabad and Chennai through 2025. Sales in Bengaluru stayed flat, but the city registered a 12% increase in prices. Tata Power says it will invest 6,675 crore rupees towards a 10 gigawatt ingot and wafer manufacturing facility in Nellore. The Andhra government earmarks a 200-acre land parcel for the project. President Trump's tariffs continue to have their presence felt in India's exports as Chennai's auto components corridor has seen a 30% shortfall in orders coupled with delays since mid-2025. That's an ET Now exclusive. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan says the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is a threat to democracy and proves American imperialism. And ahead of assembly elections in Tamil Nadu, the Patali Makkal Katchi, the PMK, announces that it will be part of the NDA alliance. The PMK, remember, becomes the first significant regional party to join the alliance since the BJP and AIADMK reunited last year. Well, our top story first. Residential sales across the country dipped by 1% across the top 8 property markets through 2025. At least that's what Knight Frank's data says. This was accompanied by a 19% increase in average weighted prices in the same period. Among the top performers in 2025 were South Indian cities. In fact, Chennai saw a 12% growth in sales, over 18,000 units sold, and a 7% increase in prices. Hyderabad, on its part, saw sales grow by 4%, while prices rose by 13%. Now, while Bengaluru saw flat residential sales, the city did also see a 12% rise in prices. This, of course, in stark contrast to cities like Mumbai and NCR, where sales grew just about 1%, and in the case of Mumbai, and while in the Delhi NCR region, recorded a 9% fall in average sales numbers. Both cities, however, saw a growth in terms of average pricing itself. So the question now remains, what becomes of Indian real estate and South India's real estate through 2026? In fact, Knight Frank's chairman and managing director Shishir Bajal said that the overall fall in sales notwithstanding, momentum continued despite the rise in average weighted prices. He added that the contribution of NRIs in housing sales was between the range of 12 and 15% through the year, a contribution that has steadily grown since a decade ago. So we're asking the questions today. Can South India continue to sustain real estate sentiment across the country? Will prices plateau out in 2026? Or is the trend of upward movement here to stay? And more importantly, has Indian real estate already hit its post-COVID peak? To speak to us about all this and more, I'm now joined by Vivek Rathi, National Director of Research at Knight Frank India. Vivek, firstly, thanks so much for joining us on the broadcast today. My first question to you, you know the data better than I do, Vivek. Indian real estate registered its first annual fall in sales numbers after nearly half a decade, if my memory serves me right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But you also see South Indian markets, especially Hyderabad and Chennai, continue to experience growth. What's made these markets here in South India so resilient?
Like you said, when it comes to the residential market, on the overall, we saw sales dip by 1 to 2% this year, whereas it's been a mixed basket across all of the markets. And if you look at the backdrop of the housing market momentum in terms of reading the 2025 numbers, we are in the fifth year of this upcycle, which began in 2020, 2021, right after the pandemic, when initially stimulus was given by many state governments to boost the housing market coming out of the pandemic slump. But since then, both volumes and price levels have succeedingly gone up across most markets, and 2025 was the fifth year in this trajectory. And why we still identify it as the fifth year in this upcycle is because even as numbers have dipped a little in some of these markets, but the home buying sentiment continues to remain strong across these markets. The price indicator continues to show an upward trend, even though in moderation, but continues to grow. And the market health, particularly in terms of inventory position, is very comfortable, which further ensures that there is no stress in the market. Now, when it comes to the sustenance of this, or how would 2026 pan out, could it kind of dip, or it could come back on a growth trajectory? There are a range of factors, but particularly we'll have to look at this home buying sentiment, which, like I said, remains positive. Secondly, on the context of the economic and business activity, that numbers, the recent set of numbers that came up for the economy continues to be strong, resilient, 7.3% growth. If you look at the office market, the job creation activity, which is reflected in the commercial real estate space take up, that has been very robust in India. This year, 2025, we're talking about 86 million square feet of demand, which is a record, historic record. And this has come on the back of a record which was 70 million square feet in 2024. Specifically talking about the southern cities, your Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, combined they constitute almost 55-60% out of this 86 million square feet of demand. What that means is Bangalore obviously is the leader. It's been a leader for long, but even markets like Hyderabad and Chennai are now contributing to 10 million square feet of office space demand, which itself is a strong record. Now, all of this with a lag of 1 to 2 years should translate into housing demand. As a result, we're
Right,
confident
Vivek.
of maintaining
Vivek,
a positive outlook for
you've summarized the
2026.
numbers, and I get that it's going to be very interesting 2026 to look forward to, especially on the pricing front. So I want to know, what is your outlook on the pricing trends for 2026? The story of 2025 is that you saw a whole lot of great real estate activity and momentum despite prices going up. So what's the outlook for 2026 now? All top property markets registered that price rise in 2025. Even Bengaluru, which saw flat sales growth, saw a significant price growth of 12%. Hyderabad and Chennai as well. So do you expect some plateauing out of prices in the new year? What is your take?
So the key point here is the price growth that is happening is largely driven by the high value segment, which is the category beyond 1 CR. So now, even in case of Bangalore, 1 to 5 CR is the segment which has done very well. And obviously, while I would not consider at the cost of the lower value segment, but the lower categories, which is the affordable housing categories, the mid categories, have been suffering across most markets in this upcycle. Now, as a result, the ability of consumers continue to remain strong in the higher value segment, and which is why this price rise continues to happen. Whereas when it comes to the volumes, there has to be a bigger participation from the low and mid segments, which are houses up to 1 CR, for the volume growth to also show up. So in 2025 or even FY26, the set of developer number announcements that we are expecting are going to show very moderate to flat volume growth, but very strong value growth in terms of the revenues that they're going to book for FY26, and it's going to be a record year in terms of sales.
So from a pan-India perspective then, do you expect sales to rebound this year? I know that you just said that a lot of the mid-segment needs to fire on all cylinders to that happen. But let's also remember, as many as 3 repo rate cuts have taken place last year. Surely that must incentivize home buying, price rise notwithstanding. So do you see sales to bounce back this year?
Yeah, so like I said, in case of higher value segments, which I refer to largely 1 or 2 CR and above categories, there it is influenced by both the affordability factor, driven by incomes and mortgages, but all more to do with the wealth effect, which has been very positive over the last 3 4 years. Even in 2025, which was an otherwise tough year, wealth creation continued to happen, and which is reflecting in the higher value segments. But when it comes to the lower value segment, your question on the affordability or the interest rates. Now in 2025, 125 basis point rate cut, repo rate cut happened, but only about 50 60 basis point has been transmitted because of the liquidity position. We're expecting this transmission to happen in 2026, and we're also expecting some more, rate cut in this year. As a result, you will see some benefit accruing to the lower and mid segment value of housing buyers who are more sensitive to home loan interest rates in comparison to their peers in the higher value segment. But would that be sufficient is a matter which the stakeholders will have to look at more closely. We are expecting some more intervention, particularly in by the government in the affordable housing category, for it to improve in 2026 and 27 on a meaningful basis.
Right, you talk about some intervention, especially in affordable housing. So let me end by asking you, we're a few weeks away from the union budget. What are some of the expectations that you feel the real estate sector might have from the finance minister, even as she puts pen on paper and sets the tone for the country's fiscal policy for FY27? Is it only all about low-cost housing, or is there more, do you feel, that the sector might want?
Yeah, so the stakeholders have always, continued to ask, and obviously you can ask the moon, but we'll also have to recognize that the fiscal abilities of the government is also limited. When it comes to the real need, there are certain weak segments in the market which need an intervention, particularly when it comes to fiscal support, directly or indirectly through tax breaks or pause on any kind of taxes. And therefore, like I said, office market is doing very strong, so no fiscal support would be expected. uh, if you look at the residential segment, higher value segment is doing well, but the lower value segment, this has been on structurally weak trend over the last 3 4 years, and that is where some intervention may come in. The government has been committing almost 80 to 85,000 crore every year when it comes to the housing for all agenda, and it will be good if this contribution goes up. But beyond this, if there are further relaxations when it comes to the GST, incentivized GST rate, which is applicable on the lower segments, it will be good. If now the PMA benchmarks can be expanded to correlate more with the current market scenario, which would mean taking these up from 40 45 lakhs to an 80 to 90 lakh rupee kind of a ticket size. It will benefit. You would reckon that RBI increase the priority sector lending benchmarks from almost 35 40 lakhs to 65 lakhs in 2025, which has brought in some benefit on the mortgage rate for the lower value segment. But similar intervention by the central government will also help the cause in 2026.
Right. Right. Well, lots to look forward to there from the lower end of that segment, and let's hope that the FM's budget will have the necessary policy push to actually resurrect the fortunes of that segment in particular. On that note, Vivek Rathi, great speaking to you. Thank you so much for breaking down those insights for us. Moving on to Andhra Pradesh now. Tata Power is all set to invest over 6,600 crore rupees towards a 10 gigawatt ingot and wafer manufacturing facility in the state's Nellore district. We learned that the company has plans to establish a greenfield facility in the region. The project itself is likely to be the largest ingot and wafer manufacturing facility in the country, reinforcing Andhra's position as a hub for advanced solar manufacturing. The facility in question is expected to take form and shape at an SEZ in Nellore, where the state has earmarked 200 acres for development. This, of course, includes 120 acres for the initial phase and another 80 for the project's expansion. Meanwhile, the National National Highways Authority of India has entered the Guinness World Records. At least that's what Andhra Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu claims by setting two separate world records in highway construction in the state. The feat was achieved on the Bengaluru-Kadapa-Vijayawada Economic Corridor. It saw construction teams lay out 10,675 metric tons of bituminous concrete, the highest ever, and complete 28.95 lane kilometers of highway. Another Guinness World Record apparently. And all this within a 24-hour window. In fact, Naidu called it a landmark moment for infrastructure development, noting that strict quality benchmarks were also followed despite the pace of work. The project is being executed by a contractor with the name of Rajpath Infracon. Officials now indicate that similar attempts are underway to set similar Guinness World Records at two other stretches of the corridor. And sticking with news from Andhra's infrastructure segment, the state's urban development minister Pinarayi has said that the work towards the completion of the state's new capital city, Amravati, is on at full pace. In fact, the minister added that in just 3 years' time, Amravati would have an airport and an integrated sports complex. Now, the outlook comes even as the Andhra government has reprioritized developing its new capital city, especially since Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu won assembly polls in 2024. The city's development, remember, took a backseat during the Jagan Mohan Reddy years, even as confusion over the state's capital persisted through that term, only to then re-emerge, Amravati that is, as the undisputed capital city when Naidu became Chief Minister again 2 years ago. Well, moving on to news from Chennai's auto components sector next. President Donald Trump's infamous Trump tariffs are continuing to cast a shadow on the auto components industry. In an ET Now exclusive, the managing director of Chennai-based GH Induction India Limited, R.V. Chari, told me that the component sector has seen order cancellations and delays since the Trump tariffs came to be. And while some companies may have offset the impact, others are seeing a 30% drop in orders. Here's a slice of that conversation that we had as part of our recently launched series in the run-up to the Union Budget. That's Budget Yatra 2026. Take a look.
There's a challenge not only from the tariff alone. The tariff has impacted us tremendously, but on top of it, the European market going down was also part of the challenge. With the tariff being implemented, we had challenges from Thailand, Indonesia and Vietnam. Also pitching up for the space we lost. And we thought that we will have the impact only on the 50%, but then it also increased much further than that on the total market. So I would guess that some customers of ours are affected, some less, some more. The people who had warehousing there were affected much more than people who were able to export from here, Ex-Works Chennai. They had lesser impact compared to the ones who had warehouses there.
Right. Order book wise, have the auto component companies been impacted in a large way, given the fact that a large chunk of components exports were US bound? What kind of an impact has the order book taken really, Ms. Chari?
Yeah, order book has been affected quite a lot. In fact, as a capital machinery builder, we have been impacted by projects getting delayed. And our customers have been discussing with the end users to find out how this is going to impact the future business. Because as a capital machinery builder, we are looking at future business and not today's market as such.
And what has the drop in orders been like since the tariffs?
Since the projects are postponed, there's a movement of projects, and exactly there's no impact on today's inquiries, but today's turnovers are affected because the projects we expected didn't happen in the current year. It is shelved to the next year.
Turnover wise, what has the impact been? To what extent and to what degree has turnover been affected?
I would guess that the turnover was about 20-30% lower on effect of the tariff. But then we were fortunate enough to go into other markets where there was business and then grow ourselves today by 30%.
Right. And of course, you've managed to actually weather the storm in a sense, given the fact that things looked so uncertain, around July and August last year. But the tariffs aren't the only issue that has actually plagued the industry in a sense. You've battled challenges on multiple fronts, and one of them, of course, has been with regard to the whole EV transition itself, which for the longest time now put a question mark on the future and relevance of the auto component space itself. Has diversification actually happened in terms of making that shift in energy transition and catering to the EV industry? And if yes, how have the auto components majors, much like yourself here in Chennai, actually managed to cope and adjust?
We've been having a lot of EV transition on the customers front. So a lot of projects on EVs have been going up in the last few years. And today the EV supplies, the machineries we supply to the EV manufacturers are growing. But at the same time, people are also looking at hybrid as a model rather than only limiting themselves to EV, because the EV growth has not been as it was expected. There was a big talk about EV growing and EV will take the market, but it doesn't seem to happen.
Well, lots to look forward to then from Budget 2026 for Chennai's auto component sector. Well, moving on to news from Kerala now, the state's Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has labelled the United States strikes on Venezuela as quote-unquote imperialist aggression, even going on to call it an act of terror. And the Kerala Chief Minister said the US was in fact unleashing these attacks as an act of unmasked hostility on the global south in order to perpetrate what he called the country's devious schemes. The criticism on Vijayan's social media comes even as the Kerala Chief Minister took exception to the centre for not condemning America's attacks on civilian and military facilities in Venezuela. Of course, aside from also capturing the country's President Nicolás Maduro, so the Kerala Chief Minister there singling out both actions of the United States for specific criticism. Now, shifting focus to news from politics in Tamil Nadu, the Paatali Makkal Katchi, or the PMK, has officially joined hands with the NDA. Earlier today, a faction of the party led by one of its supremos, Anbumani Ramadas, announced that the PMK would be part of the NDA. The PMK, remember, becomes the first major regional party in Tamil Nadu to join the reunited BJP AIADK combine that got back together just in April 2025. My colleague Dharani joins us with more updates from that reunion.
The PMK will be a great inclusion in the NDA bloc, because the PMK comes with a good chunk of a one-year vote bank, and we also have to see how the PMK has been split into two factions in the last 6 months. There is one faction that is behind the father Ramadas, and there is another faction that is backing the son Andumani. So the PMK is not entirely united. It is vertically split into two different factions at this point. There is an Andumani faction and there is a Ramadas faction. So today, Anbumani held a meeting with ADMK General Secretary Edappadi Palaniswamy, and he made a formal announcement that the PMK will be part of the NDA alliance in Tamil Nadu. So it remains to be seen what is going to be the reaction of Ramadas for this development, because so far Ramadas has not reacted to this particular announcement yet. So that remains to be seen. But meanwhile, Edappadi Palaniswamy is likely to visit Delhi today. He'll be meeting senior leaders of the BJP. He's especially likely to meet Home Minister Amit Shah. And sources tell us that Anbumani might accompany Edappadi Palaniswamy, but that is not 100% short information. What we can tell is that Edappadi Palaniswamy is very much likely to meet the senior BJP leaders in Delhi today, and what remains to be the result of that meeting is also something that is keenly watched.
We had met the leader of the AIADMK, Mr. Edappadi Palaniswamy, and confirmed the alliance of Paatali Makkal Katchi, PMK, with the ADMK-led front for the Tamil Nadu Assembly elections. And we will contest this election under the leadership of the ADMK in Tamil Nadu.
Well, and staying with news from politics in Tamil Nadu, AIADMK spokesperson Kovai Satyan has hit out at the DMK for likening the lighting of the customary lamp or deepam at the Tiruparakundram hill near Madurai to an act of cremation. A few days ago, the DMK's S. Raghupati made the comparison in the context of the ongoing controversy over members of the Hindu faith wanting to light the customary lamp atop the hillock, which the local administration wasn't in favor of owing to a dargah nearby. The AIADMK has now accused the ruling party in Tamil Nadu of instigating people in order to promote violence between two communities. Here's what the party's spokesperson said.
Referring to Hindus' custom and faith in lighting a lamp in the temples to that of a deceased person of a fire in crematorium shows the cheap mindset of the DMK. This is clearly targeted at instigating people. Before the Supreme Court verdict could be delivered, what DMK plan is to instigate people so that there can be violence and bloodbath. And these statements are made to instigate fellow people. And if really DMK feels that the Tiruparakundram can be equated with that of a crematorium, the question arises now is, does Sikandar Dargah is a place for a burial ground for one section of religion and people? Will the minister clarify on these lines? This shows how cheap they are. This is highly condemnable.
Well, politics in Tamil Nadu in full tilt just ahead of those assembly elections later this year. Well, on that note, it's a wrap on this episode of South Central. Thanks so much for watching. Keep watching ET Now for more news and updates from the markets and beyond. But for the moment, it's good.